Chapter 16. Indian Flat wilted before the fiery breath of the midday sun when Pat's pony stirred the dust of the wagon road. "Hello, Tim," he flung casually towards the ancient dozing in the rocker beneath the canopy of the Traveller's Rest. "How's business?" The oldster blinked and yawned.
"Oh, stage dropped off 2 locoed jaspers from Dutch Springs, and they done bought up the whole dang country and then split the breeze like the devil was on their tails. A mighty pretty gal, too, drifted in. She rattled her hocks at sunup. There's some queer going-ons, if you ask me."
The sheriff grunted with annoyance. Once again Maggie Maloney had slipped away. "Where'd she bunk?" he inquired.
"Oh, room 7.
Tim stretched lazily.
You can take any key, they all fit."
Pat lifted a key off the nail and jingled upstairs. Room 7 was cleaned up and ready for occupancy. The bed was made, threadbare carpet swept, and jug filled with water. The sheriff dropped down on his knees and peered beneath the sagging springs of the iron bedstead. As he expected, Tim's sweeping was perfunctory. A soiled handkerchief was balled by the wall. Pat retrieved it from the accumulating of dust and fluff and gave it a sniff. Maggie's odor de mort. From the carpet across around the dresser he gathered several stray hairpins. With this evidence of the fugitive's occupancy, he hit for the lobby. Outside, Tim was still dozing away. "Where'd the girl head for?" inquired Pat, settling down beside him.
"Oh, be damned if I know. The long-nosed gink rode out with her."
"Leroux," murmured the sheriff, "and he rode in alone. Well," he straightened, "reckon I'll mosey along the back trail. I'll be seeing you." Shadows crept across the flats when the conglomeration of the tents and clapboards that smothered Dutch Springs came into sight. The trail-stained sheriff piled out a leather before the courthouse. Sam paced the office, behind the boarded window frames, as restless as a cat on a hot stove. At the sound of the sheriff's step on the gravel outside, he charged through the doorway.
"They got it again,"
he announced tensely. "The payroll?"
"You bet your boots. Jake Pierce sent word an hour back. Says the hot footer for the yard."
Pat swung around. Again forked the jaded sorrel. Illuminated by flares, the engine panted on the siding outside the pay office. A curious crowd of construction men were gathered round. Coupled to the engine were the express car and caboose. The entire side of the express car was twisted and shattered. A glance told Pat the story. A powder charge. Jake Pierce pushed through the lounger, chewing on a cold cigar.
"Nicked us again," he grunted. "In broad daylight, too. Come on over to the office. I got the Wells Fargo man in there."
Pat dogged him into the paymaster's office. A heavy-built man hunched into a chair. His broad forehead was disfigured by a huge black and yellow bruise. The hair was singed off his head, and eyebrows made him resemble that of a newly-born baby. His blue shirt was patched with powder burns.
"Meet Sheriff Stevens, Markson,"
grunted Pierce. He dropped heavily into a chair.
"Give the yarn again, will you?" "Ain't much to tell."
The expressman's man's voice was flat and lifelike.
12 or maybe 10 miles down valley, a herd on the track pulled us up. Some jaspers with white masks threw down on the engineer and fireman and uncoupled the engine and pulled it ahead. I heard shots from the caboose, and then a white masked man yells for me to open up, and I gived him a load of buckshot. Next thing, the whole dang car blew up, and I passed out. When I came to, the engineer was dousing water over me.
Pat turned to the Pinkerton man, who was puffing a cigar in disgusted silence. How about the guards?
There were two in the caboose, and they was both plugged.
Any clues? Pierce dug into his pocket and produced a wadded linen handkerchief and passed it to the sheriff. Even as he caught the ball of linen, Pat recognized the scent. It was Maggie's, he ejected. He eyed the damning piece of evidence thoughtfully. Soaked with that blamed odor d'amour. Appears that she's wanting everyone to know that she was there, the dang hellcat. Anything else? The detective fumbled in his vest pocket and pulled out a small bone hairpin. Pat eyed it curiously. Can I hang on to this? And the wipe? Pierce nodded morsefully. The train crew see anything? Just saw 5 hombres riding west. By now they're so deep in the barrens we couldn't dig 'em out before doomsday. Pat rose. Well, reckon I'll drift. Back in town, he left his pony at the livery barn to be watered and graded. Sam was itching for action. He was still pacing the office. Pat told him the sparse details of the latest outrage.
What'll we do about it?
Demanded the squat rider. I guess we'll hit for the Circle L, returned Pat shortly. I gamble that Nels Larsson has a hand in this. Beneath the serene star-studded canopy of the heavens, the two riders tied their ponies in the brush and ghosted towards the Circle L ranch house. By its appearance, it might have been unlived in for 100 years. The big barn behind the house towered gaunt, and bats circled noiselessly. The quiet was unbroken save for the faint splashing of water at the spring and the intermittent croaking of frogs. The two lawmen gained the side of the silent house and inched round front towards the door. It creaked open under the pressure of the sheriff's hand. With cocked guns they stepped into the darkness. Nothing stirred. Pat struck a match. The tiny flare revealed nothing save the crud and the dust-coated furniture. We're drawing a blank. Pat grinned at the disgust that spiced Sam's sharp comment. Plenty of time for action yet, though, he drawled. Reckon we'll bunk down till sunup. In the attic. Pat boosted his short partner through the aperture into the kitchen ceiling and then hoisted his own lean body up behind him. At each end of the attic, the square windowless holes showed grey in the gloom. From a corner came a faint drone with the nest of hornets. Pat crawled along the rough planks until he lay what he judged was the center of the living room below. With his Barlow knife, he set to work whittling a small hole between 2 planks. Pat sprawled out in the darkness beside him. It was warm in the confined space beneath the sloping roof, and the hour was late. As the sheriff whittled away industriously, he heard his partner's deep, regular breathing.
Sam, he called softly.
But Sam, he was fast asleep. Pat finished the job to his satisfaction, and then pocketed his knife. From force of habit, his right hand strayed to the makings for the pocket of his shirt. He checked the impulse. If anyone entered the room below, the scent of tobacco smoke would be a sure giveaway. The sheriff rolled over on his back, relaxing gratefully, and reviewed the events of the past few hours. It was plain Maggie had been using the Traveler's Rest as a hideaway. Both LaRoe and North had apparently got wind of the fact that Indian's Flats was to be the site of the new construction camp, and then went and bought up every available piece of land. North's part was puzzling. He was a sworn enemy of LaRoe and the dance-hall girl, yet he had ridden out with LaRoe and had sent the girl a warning. But reasoning, the sheriff, He could not have worked out in cahoots with her, else why should he have sent the note, well knowing that she would have left the hideaway long before it arrived? Pat sighed. It was a mix-up. The whole damned business, from the murder of Mark Wisner to the latest hold-up, it was all a mix-up. Why did Maggie drop that scent-soaked handkerchief in the wrecked express car? Was it an accident, or was it a challenge? Or was it Maggie who dropped it? For a while he lay, half dozing, Sam's heavy breathing in his ears, and then, through the brooding quiet outside, drifted the faint but unmistakable tingle of a bit chain. The sheriff snapped into wakefulness. With mounting excitement he heard the soft crunch of pony hooves on the sandy earth and the jingle of spur chains and muffled voices outside. He wriggled over to the hole he had whittled in the floorboards. He heard the door creak open and was aware of men moving in the darkened room below. The sound of Sam's breathing seemed magnified as the sheriff strained his ears to follow the movements of the mysterious intruders. Pat nudged his sleeping partner with his boot. As he caught the glimmer of a match through his peephole, he heard a faint tinkle as the chimney of the oil lamp was removed. He tingled with anticipation. In another minute the lamp would alight, and he could identify the intruders. Sam awoke with a snort. One of his feet hit in the hornet's nest. A droning angry buzz and Sam's yell of anguish as the stinging fury swept about him rent the night. Pat, too, was fighting off the buzzing horde. Quiet silence fell on the room below. Then the roar of a .45 filled the house and a slug ripped through the planks. Pat jumped up and hit his head a resounding thump against the roof, reeling, half-stunned, while more guns crashed and bullets whined about him. Sam fired a shot through the floor and bumped against the sheriff. "Let's go," snapped Pat, hauling Sam towards the nearest window with one hand and fending off hornets with the other. Wide awake now, Sam wriggled backwards through the window and hung by his hands and dropped to the ground below. Crouching against the wall, gun in hand, he waited. Pat dropped beside him. Indistinct in the semi-darkness, a fast figure rounded the house, and gun of Sam spat fire. The figure jerked to a stop and swayed and staggered back out of range. "Head for the bush," barked Pat. The pair broke from the shelter of the house. To their left stood the big barn, ahead were the corrals, behind which the brush was bunched thick. They crossed the stretch of starlight open ground, running hard, dodging from right to left. More guns flashed and blossomed behind them. Lead moaned through the night and spat viciously into the earth round their flying feet. Pat and Sam reached the corrals and ducked between the rails. Pat at his heels, he loosened two more shots in a gun-fanning group, while dark figures loomed against the ranch house. The two raced along inside the rails, plunging through on the other side. Another breathless spurt, and they crashed into the welcoming cover of the chaparral. Branches whipped their faces. They pushed on, until the spread was hidden by undergrowth. Their pursuers' fire slackened, then ceased. And once again, deep quiet enveloped the Circle L. Sam stopped, panting. "Good gosh," he gasped. "What a stampede! Lead buzzing like hornets, and hornets stinging worse than lead." He ruefully fingered his swollen features. "Dog blast it!" exploded the sheriff. "You're no more help than one blind mule sticking a nest of hornets onto us just when I was going to get wise to who the glutes were." "Say," groaned his squat partner, "I thought I was in hell wrastling 10,000 devils. I'm all swolled up like a paisin pup. Now what do we do?" "We sit tight. For gosh sakes, don't be stirring up a pack of rattlers next."
"Nothing can sting worse than them measly hornets," returned Sam feelingly.
Peering through the interlaced brush, the pair watched the house. Shadowy figures moved around the yard, and after a while a blurred file of riders dropped down towards the aspen grove and faded into the night. "Let's go." The sheriff stealthily moved forward.
Back to that hornet hell? Wailed Sam. No siree, you give me the rattlers.
But Pat was already ghosting towards the corral. His squat partner groaned and then hastened into his wake. The Circle L was dead and deserted as it had been when they first entered. Pat lit the glass bowl lamp on the table, his eyes searching the room. A tiny lace-bordered handkerchief lay on the bearskin rug. The sheriff gathered it up. No need to stiff it. The rank of odor de mort filled the room. He tossed it to Sam. The latter's features misshapen from the hornet stings screwed up in disgust.
I reckon Maggie left her calling card again.
The girl is sure set to let the world know that she's a bold and bad bandit, commented Pat thoughtfully. He blew out the glass-funneled lamp and the room was plunged into darkness. "Let's go rustle up our ponies and then hit for home." Next morning, the sheriff washed down his customary stack of flapjacks with black coffee at the restaurant. He rolled a smoke, slid off the stool, and drifted across Main Street. Despite his protests, Pat had packed his partner home to his ranch. The squat rider needed a wife's care, and the sheriff decided a mess of hornet stings was no joke. Quick, angry steps pattered onto the lean-to as he was sitting down at his desk. June Larsson swung through the doorway, storm signals in her usual placid blue eyes.
"A thief has broken into my store," she announced, her clear voice vibrating with anger. "The whole place has been turned upside down, and my personal belongings are scattered everywhere."
"Grab any coin?"
"No, thank heavens. My money was hidden, and the sulking coyote never nosed it out."
"So we busted in for nothing. Well, June, guess he won't be coming again."
"But he did take something,"
objected the girl. "Yeah?" Pat eyed her with interest. "Such as?" She bit her lip with annoyance.
"Well, small personal belongings, nothing of real value."
Pat rose. "Want I should go over the place?" A thought struck him. "Say, don't you bunk down behind the store?" A quick flush stained the clear skin of June's cheeks. For a moment her troubled eyes met his and then dropped.
"Usually I do," she admitted, "but occasionally I ride up to the old Circle L camp near Finger Rock."
"And spend the night with your husband?"
"Yes."
Her voice was faint. "Are you still in love with that Jasper?" June nodded mutely. "And last night he didn't show up?" Her eyes widened.
"How'd you know?"
The sheriff chuckled. "You'd be surprised how much an old warthog like yours truly gets to know. Well, June, I reckon you better sleep with a shotgun from now on."
"I always do,"
replied the blue-eyed girl tensely. End of chapter 16.